And I think they've all been able to approach and appreciate that gift in a different way because of how they were raised. So Will comes from a very sort of traditional two-parent, wealthy household from a suburb of Boston. He's always been taken care of and respected and loved. And so I think his relationship to music and to fame is a lot more straightforward. And Anna, on the other hand, really had to struggle to get to conservatory and then to have her career. And so it's a much more fraught relationship to fame and to music because she had to give up so much in order to get there. And so for her, I think because of what she has given up, she feels that she has to give everything to music because that's all that she has left. And so that causes some tension in many different ways.
This is Story to Count with Jen Jumba. In conversations with writers, something magical happens. And as readers, we begin to see them as human beings and not just the name on the spine of a book. My hope is through these conversations, you learn about their craft and them as a person. You'll become like me. Fiercely loyal, want to read their current book, entire backlist, any future book, or any book they blurb. And when you see their name, you'll want to support them, not only as the incredible storytellers, but also the thoughtful individuals you have come to know. So I'm super excited because my guest today is Juliet Izon, and she is a New York City and Hudson Valley-based journalist and author. Her work has appeared in national newspapers such as the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, magazines like Travel and Leisure, Food and Wine, and Architectural Digest. Her first novel, The Encore, was published by Union Square and Company, part of Hachette, in March. So it's only a couple months old, which is really great. She was born in University Park, Maryland. She's a proud alumna of Sidwell Friends School and Trinity College, from which she graduated with honors in English literature. Before becoming a freelance writer, she held editorial staff positions at Bauer Publishing, Niche Media, and Modern Luxury, where she wrote on a variety of lifestyle topics, including entertainment, travel, restaurants, and design. In her free time, you can often find her traveling the world with her husband and daughter, but when she's home, she's probably at the theater catching a new dance performance or an off-Broadway show. The gems of living in New York City. That's terrific. So excited that you're here to talk about this debut novel of yours, The Encore. Do you want to introduce us to Will and Anna?
Sure. So The Encore, one of my good friends who's also a writer, Allie Rosen, when I was still very green at talking about it, was like, you just need to tell people that it's Daisy Jones and the Six meets Gossip Girl. That really, I've sort of latched onto that. I think in a lot of ways it's a lot more of a serious story than a Gossip Girl is, of course. But I think that sort of captures both the glamour of the music world and the glamour of, this very specific milieu of Upper East Side, New York City. So there's sort of three main characters. There's two POVs. So one, the sort of main character is named Anna Buckley, and she is a very successful indie rocker singer-songwriter. And then the other POV is from Lottie, who is a 16-year-old piano prodigy who goes to an all-girls school in New York. And she lives with her uncle, who is a fashion designer named Aiden. And then Will Pendleton is a contemporary of Anna's, and they went to music conservatory together. And he is a very successful classical composer and, polymath and conductor. And you sort of first see Anna and Will as teenagers in conservatory. And then quite some time passes and you find out why they have not been in contact for about a decade and a half and how all three of these characters are related and what they are to each other.
It's a wonderful story. These characters are so great. And I think you do a really great job of kind of capturing them as human beings and how complex that is, that they're not all one thing or another. And you also do a really great thing where Daisy Jones is a great book. Love Taylor Jenkins Reid. But that was focused on rock. And what you do is you kind of contrast the classical music world with the singer that Anna Buckley is. And it's really kind of fun to see the distinctions and yet similarities between the two. So knowing this, I have to ask, what is your music background? Were you classically trained?
I was not classically trained. I did a lot of research. As you mentioned when you read my bio, I primarily work as a journalist. So I love research. I love fact checking. I've always been a music lover. My dad was in a band his entire life and played guitar and bass and sang. So I was always surrounded by it, but my own musicality is sort of more limited to just being a really good listener.
That's okay. I mean, musicians need listeners, right?
Right.
And then people who
Exactly.
write about it. So, I mean, it kind of a perfect intersection.
100%. So, I played piano as a kid and I have to say I was very good at the recorder, the way,
Yes. The
all third
third
grade.
grade rite of passage.
But I kept up with it for a few years. I was in a recorder ensemble. We went and played
Fun.
nursing homes.
Yeah. But you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I loved it. But anyway, I never went to conservatory. I never played an instrument at a professional level. And so when it came to this book, I think I did two things. One was try to relay my passion for music as a music lover and someone that loves to go to concerts and read about musicians and obviously just listen to music obsessively when I'm home. And then the other half was trying to make it feel as accurate as possible. And so that was where a lot of the research came in, whether that was watching YouTube videos or posting on Reddit subreddits for composers, classical musicians, and then doing interviews either in person or over the phone with people who are in that world. So tour managers and sound engineers, vocalists and conductors, composers, really like the whole gamut of characters who appear in the book.
You live in New York City, so there's no shortage of musical people to be in touch with, from the Met Opera to New York Philharmonic. I mean, it is like rife with tons of musicians, even the ones performing in the subways with the great sound ambiance
Right.
reflections. It's amazing music. And I think you did a great job conveying your passion for music that comes across on the page. You obviously did your research well. So as librarians, we're the people that love to do research and help people with research. And some of the words that you use to describe music were spectacular. When you were talking about Will as a composer, I mean, he's sitting in the room. One of the opening scenes in the book is he stumbles into Anna, both allegedly booked for the same room to practice in for upcoming recitals and performances. And he's able to sit down and she's practicing. And he's like, well, do you mind if I just hang out here? I'm going to kind of write some music. And I'm always amazed at how people's brains work that can do that can think of music. And not only that, not just for one instrument, but an entire orchestra. Like each instrument does something different and sounds different, and putting it together in a way to make this incredible sound to me is always amazing. And so I think you did a nice job of capturing that.
Thank you. It's still mind boggling to me, too. One of my friends who I interviewed is both the band leader of an indie rock band and a classical composer. So he was integral.
Yeah.
Because I could text him a lot of questions and be like, is this how this works? But I was at his studio a few months ago and he's working on a new piece for orchestra. And he was showing me the staff music, or the staff paper with the music on it and all the different instruments and each line and how it was different. And it just, I'm so impressed by anyone whose brain works in that way, where you could be thinking about a violin and also a trombone at the same time and knowing how they should be different and how they should also be alike. It's just phenomenal.
Right. You talk about an interview that Will's doing with GQ magazine in the book. And one of the things that he talks about, which is I'm hoping part of what your book will do, is that he wanted his goal as a conductor and as a composer is to make classical music more accessible to young people. And we talked a little bit before that I worked for a classical radio station for several years and, was in a different capacity. I was in sales and would write commercials and produce broadcast. So I didn't know, but thankfully, like the people, we don't call them DJs, the on-air personalities were really great to teach and help me understand a lot of the things that were happening. But it's really hard to remember classical music pieces because it's normally a letter and a number, opus this, letter this, versus, some things that we know by name in a, indie rock band. I thought that was really, really great. And then the other thing that you did a wonderful job of capturing is how athletic it is to be a conductor. I mean, the moving and the cueing, it truly is a workout when you
Yeah.
watch the good ones on stage to kind of get everything that they need from everybody that's in the orchestra. So I thought that was a really great thing to see from that perspective.
Thank you so much.
And then Anna, I really liked her character and found her just to be this neat person who's incredibly talented and just still seems a little bit lost early on in the book. Do you want to talk a little bit about her journey without
Sure.
giving anything away? No spoilers.
Right. It's funny because I was talking to someone who just read it and they were like, "Oh, she's such a wonderful anti-hero." And I was like, "That's really interesting because I hadn't thought of her in that way." And yet she does a lot of things to self-sabotage.
Yeah.
Like, I guess it's not an inaccurate description, but I didn't set out, I guess, to position her in that way, but I can see how you could see her in that way. But, Anna is all three of them are very musically gifted. And I think they've all been able to approach and appreciate that gift in a different way because of how they were raised. So Will comes from a very sort of traditional two-parent, wealthy household from a suburb of Boston. He's always been taken care of and respected and loved. And so I think his relationship to music and to fame is a lot more straightforward. And Anna, on the other hand, really had to struggle to get to conservatory and then to have her career. And so it's a much more fraught relationship to fame and to music because she had to give up so much in order to get there. And so for her, I think because of what she has given up, she feels that she has to give everything to music because that's all that she has left. And so that causes some tension in many different ways.
Without a doubt. Yes. I mean, it is emblematic of life and things. I was struck by her looking back at when she was 6 years old and talking about you tease out your very first melody. She's sitting at the piano and it feels like rainbows coming straight out of your fingertips. Like you finally found the magic that's been crouching inside of you all this time. And here she is at 6 years old, recognizes this. And then the horrific thing that happens afterwards, where her gift is not encouraged, like Will's family encouraged his musical talent and his musical gift. And so you're right, they're all appreciating it from different perspectives. Whereas I feel Anna, that's her whole identity is music is what allowed her to escape that horrible upbringing.
Right.
And then after a while, you get to be an adult trying to figure out, all right, where do I fit? Where do I belong? And still with music as a big part of my life. So
Yeah.
I always find it interesting when people trying to figure out what the priority is, right? And afraid of who you are without something as much as you are who you are with something like that.
100%. I think for Anna in particular, that's the great question and debate of her adult life.
And Lottie is a great character. What a great individual. She lives with Aiden, who's her uncle guardian in this like fabulous townhouse. He's a designer. Just this really great space. And at the same time, he travels a lot for work and she's left alone. But yet she has music to lean on to help. And then she has a really cool best friend, Sasha. So watching that dynamic play out is really kind of fun as well.
It's funny because I was at an event in Martha's Vineyard about 2 weeks ago, and it was fun. It was a dinner, and most of the people there had already read the book, and I was sort of going from table to table, and people were discussing, various elements of the book. And one woman said to me, I didn't find that super believable that Lottie would be left home alone all the time. And I was like, you know what? You should come to New York because I can show you a bunch of kids who are just sort of left on their own for any number of reasons. But I've seen it play out a lot, even with kids younger. Lottie's 16, has just turned 16 in the book. And I know of kids who are 12 or 13 whose parents leave for the weekend and they live in a doorman building. And they're like, you know what? If anything crazy happens, just go down and ask Joe, but otherwise, here's our cell phone number. We'll be back on Sunday.
That I mean, I can remember the big deal it was when I was growing up and my mom, once we were back in school, went back to work and we were the latchkey kids. You would get off the bus when you would use the key and you would get in the house and then my mom would call, but there was like the signal. She would let it ring twice and then hang up. And so you knew when to call back. I mean, this was before caller ID and cell phones and all of that fun stuff. But
Yeah.
for a weekend, I mean, that's a little bit different. But I guess if you're in a building with a doorman, I mean, what could possibly happen?
I know. Famous last words.
Famous last words. The other thing, looking at Anna in terms of her and her musicianship, that she works tirelessly on her music, and it had been her reliable escape since she was barely out of middle school. To stop meant inviting more spiky and sticky thoughts to rise up like water in a clogged drain. Just thought, what a beautiful expression. I think we've all felt that, but to be able to articulate it, you have a gift with words to capture something that we've all felt, you know?
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Are we allowed to talk about, because it's not really spoiling, the three of them and the tour for the summer? Because I think that,
Absolutely.
okay, good. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that all happened? I mean, what better way to get to know people than to travel on a bus with them for weeks at a
Why
time,
not?
right?
Again, what could go wrong there? So look, I think a close reader of what we've been discussing, or anyone who's read the book blurb, can probably put it together. But what you find out is that Lottie is the child of Anna and Will, and that Anna had never told Will of her existence and had given her up for adoption. And Lottie, via Aiden, her uncle, finds out who her parents are and tracks them down. After a few weeks of that, Anna decides that maybe it would be a good idea for the two of them to join her on her US tour as a way to sort of start repairing the bonds for the two of them to get to know Lottie, and they'll see what happens with that. And so it's inherently a pressure cooker environment because,
For
again, they're
sure.
all stuck on a bus together, regardless of how they might feel about one another. And there's really no escape because it's close quarters. And so I think in some ways it really forces them to confront issues, particularly with Anna and Will, that they hadn't. And poor Lottie gets stuck in the middle of it more than once.
More than once. I think at one point she said that she was surprised that adults were more dramatic than teenagers. She had no idea. I was like, it's true.
And I think one of the things for me that was fun about writing Lottie is I've had a lot of people say to me, she's a very different sort of teenage character because she's not really stuck in as much of her own sort of self-absorption or angst as most teenagers, and they're like, why did you write her that way? And I was like, well, one, it was just like an interesting foil for Anna in particular, who is, I think, in some ways a lot less mature than she could be, even though she's been very self-sufficient for a long time. But I think the thing that's really admirable and also really tragic about Lottie is that she's had to grow up so fast because she lost her adoptive mom when she was 8. And I think as much as Aiden loves her, he's not super equipped to be a great caretaker, or certainly not. And so I think he does the best that he can, which is sometimes not the greatest. And so she's had to be very self-reliant and self-sufficient from, probably since middle school. And so I think because of that, she has a more measured response to meeting her birth parents and their shenanigans, particularly Anna's, than she probably would otherwise.
Yeah. She strikes me as a bit of an old soul. And at the same time, you talked about how she's like kind of not the typical teenager. She's not self-absorbed. And because she's lost a couple parents who raised her, she even says something like, let's see, her guiding principle since moving into Aiden's house was to fit her life into his and never the reverse. Kind of always feeling like a guest maybe in somebody else's house rather than this is my home too, and not wanting to disrupt his lifestyle. And so I just think not many teenagers think that, but then I think about the life experiences that she's had and how she would come to that, which I think she's just an incredibly thoughtful teenager,
Yeah,
which I really liked.
me too. One of the lines that I like a lot that she says towards the end of the book is that she's always been everybody's second choice. Poor
I-
Lottie.
It hit right that hit hard. And for her to find the words to express that, I I just was kind of blown away. And
Yeah.
I mean, she should never be anybody's second choice because she's a pretty remarkable teen. Not only talented musically, she's gifted academically, she has friends. She just has this sense of self, which not every teenager, I think, has. And I also think what was really neat about her is she now knows, Will and Anna and what their life is like as a musician full time, as a professional and a career, and how deliberate she is in terms of thinking about whether or not she wants that type of life too. Because I think a lot of us would be like, oh my God, yeah, I want to be famous and yeah, I want everybody to know me and whatever else. But there's a cost that comes with that. There's the gossip that comes with it. We love to build people up only so we can tear them down. The TMZ era that we live in, where all of a sudden your life is not really yours. It's this bizarre narrative that, not that you're the journalist that would do that. However, things get taken out of context and you could spend your whole life fighting against it. But at a certain point, you just have to kind of like disengage from it and just kind of be you.
Right. Exactly. I was going to say that for me was one of the interesting parts about writing Anna is that she is in some ways an intensely private person. And she has put herself in the position of now being a very public person. And
Hmm.
so, how does someone who has a lot of secrets to keep and is just sort of emotionally closed off to begin with reconcile that with needing to be this person who is on a literal world stage and has these fans that look to her for advice? And so, you see this bifurcation that happens of this a public person versus a private.
Right. And I think you captured that really well, that she kind of turns like almost like she flips a switch. Like she's kind of standing backstage once the lights go on and then she goes out, she like flips a switch and she's this, I'm going to say character, but it's like this other part of her, this incredible performer, musician. And then when she's not performing, she prefers just to be like in jeans and a t-shirt and just casual and looking to write music. And I think that's great. She seems relatively grounded in that. So, and Will
Yeah,
just kind of just accepts it as is. I don't know if there's just not as much drama in a classical music world.
I think that's part of it.
Well, I mean, yeah, you work in a classical radio station, you know some stuff, but
Yeah,
I will not repeat anything. But I think that there is probably a distinction between the two. The other thing that
definitely
I was struck.
fandom.
Yeah. I mean, there are conductors like Dudamel who I would love to meet in real life, right? He's amazing as a conductor. So there's some, I get it, but probably not as many as there are, rock stars that people want to meet. Yeah, it's a great thing to be on a bus to see what performing day in, day out is like, that it's not as glamorous as we think. I mean, you're up late, you're performing a concert at night. Very few rock stars are performing matinee performances, right? So it's part of some like music festival and it's like an all day thing, but that's a late night. And then she goes and she hangs out with her fans as part of the PR. And there are moments where Lottie's like, why do you do that? Like, kind of pay attention to us. Like, how do you have time for them? They don't even know you, but it's like she's projecting this persona. And I don't know, maybe it's the fact that they all adore her and look to her for advice that she feels this sense of worth. I don't know.
Saw in those scenes is that, and I think Lottie sort of touches on this, is that Anna can choose how the relationship she has with her fans, right? She chooses parts of her they get to see and therefore the parts of her that they love. And so I think it feels like a very safe connection for her to make. And I also think, again, like knowing what she's given up to have this life, there's a sense of being indebted to the people who have made this life possible for her, that buy the tickets to go to her shows, that give her the money to pay
Right. Do you think of yourself as a writer like the same way when you go to these events and people are fangirling over you, Juliet, who wrote the Encore, and buying your books and having you sign their books and personalize their books?
It's funny because obviously this is my first book and you don't really ever get fans as a journalist. Maybe there's like somebody like Taffy, right, might have fans. And now she's a novelist too, so I don't even know if that counts. But, I think for the most part, we are far more anonymous in that sort of writing. And novels are very different in that way. There is an expectation that hopefully people will connect with what you've written. And yeah, exactly. There's events, right, where you do a reading and you do a signing and you get to meet people. And so what's been really interesting and fun for me is obviously the first few weeks of the events, nobody had read the book because had only been out for a few days. But now that we're coming up on almost 3 months, when I do events now, a lot of the people are coming because they have read it and they want to meet and they have a certain scene or character they want to talk about. And that for me, I mean, even doing podcasts like this where people have read the book is so fun. And I love these characters. They feel like real people to me. And so to get to chat about their emotions and their motivations for doing things with other people who are interested in them is endlessly exciting and fun for me. But yeah, it is funny when I've met people who are like, do you mind if I take a picture? Or like, do you mind if you sign my book? And I'm like, this is hilarious that anybody would even like think that I ever say no. Like, of course, like this is the coolest thing ever to have people read something that I wrote and connect with it in some way. It's like, I'll like come to your wedding. Like, like I'm here.
I think these are great characters, then, and you convey them in such a way that they're people like think that us as readers will be like, man, I'd go meet them for a beer and just hang out with them. I'd go to like open mic night with them and just see them kind of hang out, perform kind of acoustic in a small room. It's great stuff. You just put them together in a way that creates this three-dimensional character, Will. And you used a description of him when Anna first met him, and I'm blanking on it right now, but I had to look it up. It was tatter something.
Tatterdemalion.
Yes, and I was like, what a great word. How did I not know? So yes, you might know some more words than me, but but it was like almost like an automatopoeia. Like it fit exactly what you were trying to convey about how he came in kind of aloof and a little bit disheveled, but just him, like completely comfortable in his own skin. So I think it's great. And then you create scenes where like, gosh, I feel like I'm on the bus and I'm like with the people like doing the soundtracks. And now I appreciate that a little bit more than I would have before reading this book, because you give glimpses of that and how they're really a family. I mean, they're together for a large chunk of time. They've all kind of left their families to do this for a couple months at a time. So that's not easy either.
No, but I think it's worth, for me at least, it's worth the research to paint the scene as much as possible. And I've been talking about this a lot with other readers or other writers about how there's differing levels of how much an author chooses to set the scene. And some of that is preferred writing style. Some of that is just how accurately a person can picture something in their head. Because as I'm learning, there's varying levels of that. There's some people who really don't have the ability to picture scenes in their head, and so the writing is going to be more focused on dialogue, for example, than it is going to about description. Whereas for me, I think I blocked in my head every single scene in terms of where a character was and what part of the room they were moving to, and so I think that comes across in most scenes, that it makes it a little easier, I think, to picture how it's playing out because I give a decent amount of stage direction, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there are moments where like Anna flops on the couch and you totally get that. You're capturing things that like a lot of us do every day. I mean, not all of us perform, on stage, but we've come home. It's been a long day. You kind of flop down on the sofa, kind of like, whew, that was a day. So capturing that, the ordinariness of it, which also makes it so relatable and makes the characters accessible, kind of like Will wanting to make classical music accessible to younger generations. So super, super fun. The other thing that I found interesting in the book is just the role of technology in terms of she being Lottie is gifted on her 16th birthday by Aiden her birth certificate, and what she hesitates to open it. And I just, again, it's the Lottie, that old soul, like I'm going to think things through and I'm going to do things deliberately, which I think is great. And then the role of technology, like how quickly we can find people in today's day and age, which is really kind of mind boggling when you think about it.
Right. Right. And it's funny now. I was talking about this with my husband, how if let's say you're writing a mystery book
Hmm.
or movie, right? And it's set day, there's so many more technological advances that you need to account for that will make it harder for someone to disappear, for example.
Yes, exactly. Right.
Old seasons of the X-Files, which which is such a great show, and I think it starts somewhere around, like, 1991 or 92, and so like, I don't know, I think we're in season 3 or 4 now, and, like, now they have, like, big clunky cell phones, but they didn't, I think, in the season, and there's so many movies that rely on the trope of somebody not being able to reach someone else, right? And if you set a book or a film in 2026, that's not really feasible anymore, right? Or you have to write in, "Oh, this person's phone died." You know what I mean? Because for the most part, we were always so reachable. So, I even had to think about that in terms of writing the Encore. There's the earliest sections take place in like 2003 to 2007, right? And so part of the reason why Anna was able to hide Lottie well is that she goes to sort of a remote town on the west coast of Ireland. And this wasn't pre-Facebook, but it was pre-Instagram. It was before a time where you were really posting multiple
Every moment.
what you were getting up to. you
Right.
know she still was able to fly under the radar in that sense in the year 2007, but it would be even harder now, almost 20 years later. Yeah, almost 20 years later. So,
Yeah. I mean, it makes me think if there would be like the unknown Jack the Ripper if it were today's day and age, just because there's cameras everywhere. People are taking pictures of something and you catch something in the background. I mean, I don't know if there is such a thing as a perfect crime.
yeah, be hard these days.
It is very hard these days.
That's why I will be staying away from that genre.
Yeah, no. Or you write like historical mysteries, like Laurie Chandler, who writes in the 1930s and captures essence of that time period wonderfully, where you feel like you're time traveling. But like, oh, it's so great! Like, you don't have to worry about a cell phone. You have to worry about this being charged. You don't have to worry about a smartphone on your wrist that tells you all the stuff that you should do or did do or didn't do, whatever it is. So, and I thought it was fun early on talking about epigenetics. It's a lesson in Lottie's science class, kind of essentially determining what influence the environment has on you, that whole nature versus nurture debate, and then seeing it play out on the tour buses. They're kind of getting to know each other. So whether or not you come by that honestly, the perfect pitch, which to me is amazing.
I know it's one of the composers I interviewed, who's also a pianist, has perfect pitch. And I would text him occasionally, like, is this how this works for you? Or like, could you do this? Like, if I played, because there's one scene where Anna and Will are in the back of the bus and she's noodling on her guitar. And Will says to her, I really like that open tuning. Is it, whatever I said it was. And I texted Timo, this composer, and I was like, is that accurate? Like, would you be able to do that? And he was like, yes, absolutely. I was like, okay. And in the very beginning of the book, when Will tells Anna that the piano is out of tune,
Hmm.
okay, Timo, would you say it's out of tune by like X amount of hertz? Is that accurate? And he was like, no, nobody would really say that. He was like, you would either say it's flat or sharp. And I was like, okay. So
But
simple.
what? Yeah, I know. But what a gift! And I think that
What a gift.
the early days, because you have two different timelines. The early days of the relationship between Will and Anna, like just best of friends, and how they kind of encourage each other and tease each other. I think they had a whole bet about whether or not the piano she was playing was out of tune. And then there's a scene where, is it Lottie or Anna who's a kid and is like, yeah, that fan's making this.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm like, how do you do that? That to me is uncanny. So I think, we're all born with gifts. It's hopefully we're open enough to them. I mean, one of yours obviously is writing, not just journalism, but also novels. So I'm hoping that this encourages you and you'll write more.
It's the plan. We'll see. I'm working on an edit of a second book right now, but it's not under contract. So I'm going to finish it and we're going to keep our fingers crossed that it finds a home.
Yeah.
Watch this space.
No, no, no. It has to find a home because I really enjoyed the encore. And I know people who are listening and who are readers are going to love it. Just the dynamic, the music, the sense of place, what it's like to be on tour. It's almost like we kind of went around with them. Like I had a seat on the tour bus too, because of how you describe things, not only the dialogue, but the things that were aboard the bus. So I think it was quite
Thank
fun.
you.
Yeah, and then there's beautiful language that you capture in this book. I'm one of those people that loves to find little sentences and kind of write them down just so I can pull them out and read them again later. Yeah. So Anna talking about touring and her choice to always be, performing and talks about being on stage. And she says, because that space is sacred, because it's all still waiting for you when it's over, at least out there for a few hours where you can forget. And I just think, yeah, I think we've all done things where I'm hoping it's the case when you're writing that you're so engrossed in the story and these characters that stuff just kind of falls away while you're writing, because it certainly does as readers when we're reading it. And wonderful references to music in the book, which is great. So I found myself like, okay, let me just stop for a second. Let me pull it up on my phone. Let me listen to it.
Did you find the playlist? There's a playlist on Spotify.
Yes, I found the playlist. And then it's interesting, having worked in a classical radio station, I was not a huge fan of Philip Glass, just because I found it
Okay.
a little bit repetitive, but in like reading it about it and seeing it through like Anna and Will's eyes, different perspectives. So like went back and tried it and I'm like, okay. And then there's the other one that you did, which is like saved on my phone. I'm going to forget it right now, with the multiple pieces, perspectives.
The
Oh,
Steve Reich?
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Music for 18 musicians. And I like the one that has Eighth Blackbird, but I just think same thing, brains that can compose for 18 different people.
Right. And I mean, Reich in particular, Glass as well, but that piece in particular is, it's not like a verse chorus
No,
bridge situation. And there's voices and there's clapping and there's polyrhythms. And that is even, a whole other magnitude of difference in terms of trying to keep that straight, because you can't even stick to sort of a time signature to help you move it along. It's moving
right.
around all over the place.
It is, and yet you're completely engrossed and engaged in it. I think I pulled it up and I started listening and I started continuing to read while that was playing. And then I was like, wait, I have to stop and just listen.
Yeah.
It's a
It's an amazing.
magnificent piece.
It's one of my favorites, which is why it's in there. But also, there is a scene where when Will and Lottie meet, they go to the Shed, which is a real performing arts space, I guess you would call it, in New York.
Mhm.
And that was a real performance that I went to. It took place actually the year before. I have it in the book, if we're being precise. And in one of the massive event spaces within the Shed, they sort of strung up. You should look up pictures. It's very cool because it toured around the world. It's sort of like this rope web situation, and you got a ticket, and it was like a big sphere, and you climbed up into it, and then you lay down on the rope,
Yes.
and there was like a light show above you that played the entire music for 18 musicians. It was one of the coolest music experiences I've ever
Well, I would
had.
feel like you're totally enveloped within the
Yeah.
sound, which you don't really get very often.
Right. And it was so nice to be able to listen to a piece like that, not just sitting upright in a chair, but lying down. I should track down the people who created that and see if they want a copy of the book.
Yeah, absolutely. They should, because I think it's a great experience. I think anything that you can see live is great, whether it's, a writer who's on book tour, if it's live music, live theater, live dance performance. I mean, I think there's nothing else quite like it. So,
I was reading an interview with the musician St. Vincent and Clark,
mhm,
who definitely inspired some of Anna's character. And
yeah.
she was saying how there have been studies done that when you are at a live concert, there is something physiological that happens to the crowd that you are more in sync with one another on a molecular basis because you're all experiencing this at the same time. And I thought that was so beautiful to think about.
Yeah. I wonder if we can do that with your book, if we can just grab like a ton of readers who haven't read it and all read it together at the same time and just,
Very cool.
yeah. I mean, I was
It'd
a big
be,
fan of in school when we had like SSR, like sustained silent reading. I was like, oh, this is great, But I think about that and that sense of connection. And I think that's part of why book discussions are great and author events where we as readers get to talk to you and kind of learn a little bit more about your process and where inspiration came for characters. And, sometimes it's well, why did you do this with this character? But it's really kind of cool to experience.
yeah, I agree as a big reader myself,
Yeah. What,
And
what are you currently
passion.
reading?
What am I currently reading? I am reading a few different things, which I normally don't do, but I'm a
That's
little
impressive.
under the wire with certain things that need to be read by a certain date. So
Mhm.
I'm a big fan of Meg Howry, if you've ever read any of her work.
Mm-mm.
She had that came out in, I want to say 2022 called They're Going to Love You. It takes place partially in the ballet world that
Okay.
I
Yes, yes.
love. And
Okay.
on a line level, her prose is so witty and there's never a word wasted. And I just think she's phenomenal with dialogue, with descriptions, with all of it. And so she has a book coming out, I think in September, that's called Body Language. So I have a galley of that, which is wonderful. And then I'm trying to get more into audiobooks and I'm listening to Florence Knapp's The Names, which
Mm.
huge when it came out. So I'm finally getting around to that. And the narrator is really phenomenal. Great at the English accent and the Irish accent. And then my friend Carly Schwartz wrote a memoir earlier this year called I'll Try Anything Twice. And we are doing an event together in San Francisco next Sunday. And so I wanted to read it right before our event. So it was really fresh in my mind. And so I'm doing all three of those at the moment.
That's impressive. I can normally do two, but one is normally nonfiction, but two fiction books at the same time. And I was telling my friend, they're like, why can't you read more than one? I was like, I can't keep it straight. Friend looks at me, he's like, Jen, do you watch more than one television show? And I was like, well, yes. And you can keep them straight. Why would a book be any different? And I was like, huh.
You know what? Sometimes it is though, because sometimes they'll be like, wait, what happened to that sister? And then I'm like, oh, that was the other book. So, but what I'm trying right now is I'm the same as you, right? I can do a nonfiction and a fiction at the same time. I'm hoping that because one fiction is on audio and
Yes.
one is hard copy, that I'll be able to keep them straight. So we'll see. So far, the stories are very different. So I think that
Right. So that
also helps.
helps. And when you have a great narrator, that makes a world of difference too.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Laundry
What are you
becomes
reading?
a lot more fun when you're folding with the great audiobook, right? So, yeah. And there are days where I actually wish for traffic because I'm like, God, this is so good. And then I just like sit in my driveway before I pull it into the garage because I can't stop.
I know
So
you have to find a good endpoint. Are you reading anything good right now? What are you reading?
I just read The Payback.
I know it.
Elizabeth Rose Quinn. I'm in conversation with her tomorrow, and it's a story about a bunch of quirky characters that are in weekend prison. It's pay to stay. That if you have money and influence, you can do like your Monday through Friday, your regular life, and then you come to prison. And when you come to prison, you can bring all of your favorite things, your favorite decorations and lamps and pillows and your own food. It's really fun. And then the correction officer is just not a nice guy. You see that early on. I think the opening line is, Steve Bard was always a creepy kid, but it's really fun. He ends up dead early on. So that's not a spoiler, but trying to figure out who did it. So you have a locked room mystery, but like quirky characters, like one has an emotional support iguana named Nacho. It says on the cover, a thriller. And I have never laughed so hard out loud while reading a thriller.
I love it.
It's super fun. So yeah, I just like trying to read right before things so that I can keep stuff straight. So there's just so much good out there. Like there's part of me that's like, all right, I just need like a timeout. Like I need to freeze time for a second so I can kind of get caught up. And then, but
Yeah.
never
I know
can
it's,
happen.
and I also, because I have I've made so many friends who are also debut writers. Obviously, everyone's books are coming out in 2026. And so
Mhm.
my TBR is just getting quite long, but it's
No,
a good thing.
that's awesome. The debut writers are some of my favorite writers. And I will moderate sometimes for Library Journal when they do their day of dialogue. And I just think it's so much fun to watch you all just like shine bright and taking the big leap and putting this story out in the world. And it's amazing.
Thank you. It's been really exciting and fun and fulfilling, and I'm really glad I did it.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad too. And I'm glad that you have something else that you're working on because I'm excited for another book to come from you. Super
Me too.
excited.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers, fingers crossed. So as we wrap up, this is Stories End, final 5 questions. If you had a tour bus, what is something that you would have on it or you wouldn't go?
Ooh, I get hungry all the time, so I would need a lot of really good snacks, but particularly like a great selection of cheese.
Okay, good. You're not like Teddy Grahams like Anna.
No, I do like Teddy Grahams.
Yeah. No. Yeah, cheese for sure. Okay, Aiden is a fashion designer. What is one fashion trend you thought you would look back on and never feel ridiculous?
Those really wide belts from the thousands that you'd wear over the long tank top.
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah,
really hope that doesn't come back.
I know. I'm amazed at some of the stuff that has. I'm like, it was hard the first time. Like, we're
Yeah,
bringing it
I'm with
back.
you.
Come on. Okay, next question. Would you rather be able to compose music like Will or have perfect pitch like Anna?
It's actually
He
Will who
actually has perfect pitch. It's Lottie that has perfect pitch. My bad.
I think I'd probably rather be able to compose than just have perfect pitch.
At one point, Anna, who prefers jeans and t-shirts, grabs a Foo Fighters t-shirt to put on before she leaves the dressing room. Do you have a go-to favorite concert t-shirt?
Ooh. So she wears Foo Fighters because that was my very first concert. So that was an Easter egg just for me.
I love it. Dave Grohl.
But I actually have quite a selection of band t-shirts. And while I was in the developmental edit of this book, after we got a publishing deal, I tried to wear a different one every time I was editing, just as a fun thing for
Yeah.
myself to do. I'm a huge Tori Amos fan, and so I probably have more Tori t-shirts than any other musician. And so that would probably be my favorite if I had to pick. I have like a great little Earthquake shirt I wear a lot.
She's amazing. I mean, and she's one of the few musicians who you would put on the album or the CD and you could listen to the whole thing straight through. It wasn't like, oh, I got to skip just to get to this. What a voice.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Amazing. She's touring this summer. You should see if
Wow.
she's in Cleveland.
Well, this is the thing. Cleveland, home of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and yet so many musicians skip us. I don't get it. But I will definitely look and we'll drive to see Tori.
Yeah.
Say that. And then the final question, what song would you always put on a road trip playlist?
How to pick one. I'm trying to think like what I love to sing along to the most. I feel like we end up listening to a lot of Outkast, like a lot of Hey Ya.
Mm-hmm. It
That's a
just
good one.
happened. Yeah, for sure. A huge thank you to those of you who are listening, and even bigger thank you to Juliet for such a great conversation about your debut novel, The Encore. If you're looking for a story which gives glimpses into how musicians, both rock and classical, are trained and developed, this is the book for you. If you're looking for a story that is about lost love and whether we can reconnect after many years, this is the book for you. And I just want to close with a line from your book. I think one of the best things about music is how it can create a connection between two people through time, through distance, through cultures. You can communicate without ever actually speaking. To find out who else is visiting, go to storytocount.com. This is Story to Count with Jen Jumba.